All right. This is in Alexandria, Louisiana, at the city park. My name is George Allen, Georgeallen.
All right. And where was your place and date of birth?
I was born right in Alexandria on September the 10th, 1925.
Okay. How did you first become involved with the Army Air Force?
Well, when the war began in '39, the European War, Hitler ran all over Europe, and of course we knew eventually we would get into the fight. And most of the guys that I knew right here at Bolton High School had some sort of idea what they wanted to do when their time came to get in, assuming it lasts that long. So I loved the Air Force. Well, my friends liked the Navy, some liked the Army, but I chose the Air Force. And in so doing, I just started accumulating news items and things that I thought were of interest, and I just got where I wanted to be part of it, as did most young males in those days. That was not unusual. Everybody wanted to get in the fight.
Okay. What was special about your background or abilities in education that made you a good candidate?
Well, when I was at Bolton, in my senior year, they gave us a test, all the senior boys, by the Secretary of the Army, and if you passed it, I mean passed meant in those days, in this particular test, a very high grade, like in a 97 percentile. If you didn't make that much, you were not considered a candidate. It was for going to LSU, getting a civil engineer's degree in 3 years, and then being put in the Army as an officer. And of course, it was a great deal. And I was one of two who passed that, luckily. And I got the deal. My mom was happy about it. I wasn't. And I went to my dad. I said, look, I don't particularly want to do that. He said, here's what we're going to do. You're still 17. He said, you go ahead and go to LSU for a year. You'll be 18. You do what you want after that. So I did go for one term at LSU and decided I wanted to go in the Air Force. Went out to Harding Field at Baton Rouge and signed up, became a member of the Air Force. And they called me in early 1944. Of course, everybody wanted to be a pilot, but the European War was winding down then, and we had lost so many aircraft on daylight bombing. The British did the night bombing, we did the daytime bombing. And our attrition rate was high. We'd lose 20 to 30 B-17s, and that's 9 guys to a plane. So they were training pilots very rapidly. And when the time comes for us to get in at a later date, they had excess number of pilots. So when I got to what they call classification, they told me and the other cadets that we were only going to be given the choice of navigator or bombardier, no more pilots. So of course we were disappointed, but they did give the option to the cadets of resigning. They'd have to stay in about another 6 months, and one of my friends in Alexandria took that option. He was still in it. And I stayed in and became a navigator and assigned to B-29.
That was back when navigating was there wasn't no computers.
No, you had what they called an E6B. It was called a computer, but it was a hand, like a slide rule, really. And we did have radar. We had just gotten radar. It was very new. And I can remember the radar guy sat midships, and I was up front right behind the pilot. And here's another thing about the B-29. It had a tunnel. All this was pressurized. And to save room and pressurization techniques, they had a tunnel to crawl from the front of the airplane to midships. And every time you had to go, that's the way you went. So I wanted to go back to look at the radar. And they always told us, when you get in that tunnel, you get and go. You don't, because if you have a depressurization, you're a missile. The pressure decreases, you go shooting out of there like a cannonball. And we had reports of one such incident where the guy was just squashed against the wall. So that's how that went in those days.
Now, what did you first know about the Trinity test, which was, of course, the world's first explosion of an atomic bomb?
Well, we knew absolutely nothing about it. On that particular day, July the 16th, 1945, we were scheduled for an early morning flight. Our flights in the B-29 would go anywhere from 6 to 14 hours. We had the capability of staying up 14 hours. I don't recall the extent of the one we had that morning, but probably around 8 hours. So we got up at 4 o'clock and got prepared, went to the mess hall, got something to eat, pre-flighted the airplane, which takes about 45 minutes. You have to, certain areas, each flight guy was responsible for. And I remember one of the things we did, the final thing we did was walk through the props. Each of us grabbed a propeller and pushed it. And we had to be sure, of course, that the ignition wasn't on. And always the co-pilot went up there, and this particular day, he went up, sat up there, and we got a little antsy, somebody did, and pushed the prop through twice. And it's kind of banging on the wall. He hadn't turned the switches off then. If that thing had caught, we'd have wound up probably in New Mexico north somewhere. We had a lot of fun.
Do you recall the blast? I mean, what the sky looked like?
Well,
and what did you feel?
It was dark. It was 5:30 in the morning, and when we got ready to take off, called the tower as usual, and the pilot asked me for our heading, and I gave it to him. And so the tower said, hold. Not unusual, you know, if somebody's got something going on ahead of us. Well, about 10 minutes later, we made another attempt, another hold. The third time they told us, we'll call you. So we sat there for quite a while, probably another 20, 30 minutes, and almost 5:30 on the dot. It lit up just like the sky today. It was pitch dark, and just slowly the light came, slowly it subsided. Had no idea what it was, not even an inkling, and we were told that an arsenal had exploded. But of course we knew better than that. If they knew it was going to happen, and they did, I think they'd have stopped it.
Now, did the ground shake?
No, sir. We didn't see anything other than the illumination. We didn't hear anything, nor did we feel anything. It was just a little bit too far away. I think it was about 30 or 40 miles. So.
Now, you were told that it was an arsenal that exploded.
Yeah.
But you,
Oh, of course, we're not that stupid, I don't think. And
what'd you think it was?
Had no idea. See, the atomic bomb at that time, you know, I didn't even know what it was. I never heard of it. We knew rudiments of the atom. It could be made to provide a lot of energy, but we didn't have any idea anything like this was in the books.
Now, when did you first hear about the Manhattan Project and the testing of
Well, when the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, we were pretty idea that that's what it was. And of course, the announcement came later that the bomb test was made at Alamogordo, and that's the one we saw.
Okay. How much of this information did you learn through the proper channels or through scuttlebutt?
No, we didn't know anything other than what we saw and heard, because it was obvious when we heard about the Hiroshima bomb that that's what we had seen. So we had no any formal idea of what it was. It was just a pretty solid guess.
Describe your experience with the Army Air Force, and were you assigned to go to the Pacific, and were you involved in the invasion?
Well, this probably may have saved my skin, because yes, we were at that particular mission I just told you about when the bomb went off. We were in our next to last training mission. We had one more after that, and we would have gone to the Pacific. And of course, it's about when Saipan or Tinian or one of those islands where the B-29s were stored. We would have gone from there to the Japanese islands and back, which is it's about a 2,500 to 3,000 mile round trip. And along those lines, of course, we were subject to enemy attack, especially when we got close to the Japanese islands. But luckily, I didn't have to go. I would have loved to have gone just a little bit, because the training process we went through, about a year and a half altogether, was wasted. And I would have loved to have gone and survived, of course, but not all that training for nothing is what it meant.
Yeah, being a young gung-ho soldier.
Yeah, everybody had that idea. Yeah.
It's kind of like a letdown. You get all that, you're raring to go.
Yeah, sure. It's anything you prepare for and spend a lot of time with and get all pumped for it, and it doesn't happen.
Now, were you aware of the planned invasion of the Japanese?
Well, we knew that from the island hopping we were doing, that's when you had Saipan, all those islands, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and more of them was being taken over by the Allies at that time, and eventually went to Okinawa, which was the last land battle. Had we not dropped that bomb, I really believe that the Japanese would have, to a man, civilians and all, fought us all the way across that Japanese homeland because they decided we weren't going to take it.
How does that affect your attitude towards the atomic bomb?
Well, I'm sorry to see all those people killed naturally, but I always go back when I was heard about Pearl Harbor. My dad and the whole family, once in a while, he'd scoop us up and take us on a little weekend ride, and we went to New Orleans that morning in the car, just driving around, and about 11 o'clock in the morning, I think, the radio was going, and they broke in and announced that. I thought it was some sort of a drama they were putting on, but it was not, of course. And my dad said we're going home, which we did. And I recall what happened. My mom and my two sisters and myself, we had a Pontiac sedan, and on the way back home, there were servicemen lined along the highway trying to get back to their bases. And we picked up 4 of them. And I often think, I'm sure some of those were killed because they were the ones that bore the brunt. They were already in the service. And as far as the Japanese, I regret they had to lose a lot of people with the bombs, but if the other alternative was to invade, there'd been a lot of people killed, including our people and their people. And they were suicidal. I really believe they would have fought to the last person.
Do you remember any humorous incidents, or do you have any funny personal stories to share about your time?
Yeah, I guess I remember one time we had a training fight, and the bombardier and I were good friends, and this was after the bomb fell. We were still training. So we were kind of goofing around, really, and we were going out in the Pacific somewhere to make a so-called bomb run on something out there. And so the pilot told me, he said, why don't you sit up there in the nose and navigate? He said, this is all just unnecessary anyway. So the bombardier and I switched places. Now I wore what you call a chest chute. Snaps off. So when I got up there in the nose, I took that chute off, put it by me, and I began navigating what they call pilotage, looking at the ground. The bombardier went back there and went to sleep in my seat. And when we got near the IP, the initial point where the bombing, I called him about 10 minutes ahead. And I said, come on up here, we got to swap, we got to get that bomb site ready. He did, and I did. And I neglected to pick up my chute, which was still in the nose, and I went back to my seat. And my bombardier, John Novak, with whom I still correspond, by the way, looked up and said he saw this B-29 coming either at us or going away, and he assumed the plane was going away to bomb the same thing we were. And said he looked up again, and the airplane was getting closer. So he turned around, the pilot was about half asleep, and he hit him on the knee and woke him up. And he reared back on the yoke like that, and the plane went up. And I don't think the other guy ever saw it, but I'm sure we came within a football field of being hit. It was not funny at the time, but it is. We had several incidents like that.
Now, you've already answered about how you feel about the decision to drop the bomb on Japan. How do you feel about the Manhattan Project and the making of the atomic bomb? I mean, it's sort of like a Pandora's box, huh?
Yeah, that was all necessary. Anytime you have a piece of armament that's a benefit to your side, I think you've got to consider it. Excluding, of course, chemical warfare. I don't think that's should be included. But anything of an explosive nature, no matter how destructive it is, I think this stuff should be used, and we did. And it probably saved quite a number of us.
How would you describe the legacy of the Manhattan Project?
Well, I mixed emotions about it. I hate to realize the number of people that were killed by the bomb, and there was probably close to 200,000. But you put that against the number of people that we would have lost in the invasion, plus the number of people the Japanese would have lost. I do believe that's a minimal number. And so I'm positive about it. I regret it was civilians that were lost mostly. But there was no other way. If we'd had to fight hand to hand across there, it wouldn't have been beneficial to us.
There's a lot of things that have come out of those experiments. A lot of energy and whatnot through that. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, the good that's come out of it, not just.
Well, I tell you, that's one reason why I sort of initiated what we're doing right now. At the time that this happened, I was 19. Most of the people in the Manhattan Project were elderly, not necessarily elderly, but up in adulthood, 30, 40 years old. So that meant now, in 45 to 2000, that's 55 plus 14, that's 69 years ago, this happened. And if most of those were 30 or plus, that makes those people 99 to 100 years old. I doubt there's many left. And if something isn't done to record this, like you're doing now, it won't be in a couple of years, we might all be gone. So that's why I appreciate what you and your company are doing to let us have a little say-so about this and get it before the public.
Now, you said that you still talk to your bombardier, John?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. In fact, the matter is, he's supposed to be in on this, too. I gave his name to the lady up at the museum, and she was going to get in contact with him. As I said, the numbers are dwindling, and that's what bothers me. In another 2 years, 3 years, may not be any of us left. So it's good to get it on record, and I think for future generations to realize what the guys went through in World War II. I'll tell you, the young lady I married, I went right there to Bolton High School with her, and to show how things were in those days. When I left here, of course, she was still a junior. And I told her, I said, look, you can't go hold yourself up in a room waiting on me. I said, I hope we get back together. And she says, I don't want to go out. I said, you do it anyway. So she had dates. And then about 6 months into my longevity there in the Air Force, I get a letter from her. I'm not going out anymore. I'm not having any fun. And that was the mindset of people in those days. If you sacrifice, somebody in your family was going to try to do the same, or somebody you knew. When I got back home in January of 46, we got married in March of 46. And she passed away about 2 years ago. But that shows you the dedication people had in those days. It was not cursory, it was factual. And so that's just
you
it.
Married how long?
65 years when she passed away. Yeah.
And you a lifelong resident of Central Louisiana?
Yeah, I was. She lived in Shreveport a while and came here in Pineville. That's where I met her. But yeah, I've lived in Alexandria all my life. My dad was a locksmith and gunsmith. In those days, you did everything. When I came back, I was going to college. I hoped to. I had a year in already. And it so happened he was getting pretty ill. So I took over the family business, and that's what I did all my life until 2005, and I retired. I was 80 then. So I worked till I was almost 80 years.
Wow. I agree with you. I mean, I'm a third generation vet. My grandfather was in World War II and grandmother. My father was in Vietnam and I was in Desert Storm.
Really?
Yes, sir. And what I've seen or what I've noticed in talking to my dad, my grandfather died when I was young. I didn't really know him, but talking to other World War II vets and talking to my father and then my experiences, and then I have some friends who have been to Iraq and Afghanistan. It's changed tremendously. I mean, just the wartime experience.
Well, sad to say it has, and I don't think for the better. It's just one of those things. Our population has get, I think, more like me. It's not like, what can I do for my country? Like Kennedy said, it's what I can do for me. He had reversed his philosophy. And unfortunately, that's the way people are nowadays. And I don't, I don't criticize them for it, but I wish it was more in a patriotic vein like it used to be. It just isn't. In fact, the population is getting more, I think, divided over issues that they really shouldn't. There's not a lot we can do about it, but that's what's happening.
Well, but there seems to be that those who, specifically Marines, Army, Air Force, those who go into the service have a different mindset as far as the nation
I
goes.
think so. I think so because they are responsible people. Or they wouldn't have done what they did. Most of them volunteered. There was not a whole lot of draft in recent years, and they were ready to make the sacrifices, and then they did. Some of them paid the price. Some of them died. Some of them came back in a horrible condition. But I hope they're taken care of. It's just the duty of the country to do that for them because they gave all for us. I think it's a philosophy to do that.
And that mentality, that mindset, in the 40s, the 30s, 40s, 50s, actually, it kind of ended in the 50s as far, when you had the beatnik revolution, kind of that mentality, scrap drives and the war bonds and stuff like that.
That's another thing about my girlfriend, future wife. I had a little Chevrolet coupe, and the first time we went out together was informal. We went on a scrap drive for Open High School, and she and I went scrapping. And it led to a great life. It was a wonderful time with her. And a nice big family and so forth. So
how many kids do y'all have?
we had 7. 2 of them have passed away already. And she passed away, so it was a great time. My life has been fun.
7 kids, that's a lot of kids. It's fun.
It is, but she enjoyed it and I enjoyed it. And it's nice to have them now as adults. My son lives with me and takes care of his old man. So it's nice to have him around. But it's been a good life for me, and I can't complain if I'm not here tomorrow. I said 2 of the guys on my crew I corresponded with in addition to my bombardier, 3 altogether. But those 2 passed away, so only the bombardier, John Novak, and I correspond. I do not know what happened to the rest of them. There was a sort of a catastrophe in the records keeping for the armed forces. They lost a lot of that bunch of records. So I was unable to find out where my buddies went.
How was it going from Alexandria, Louisiana to Alamogordo, New Mexico?
Well, I had several stops along the way other than that, but we didn't get out a lot. We were continually training, and going out on the town was not something we had the liberty to do too much. But I enjoyed every place I went. I mostly was around this locale in Texas. Had a lot of airfields there, and New Mexico and so forth. That's generally the area where we stayed. After the bomb went off, of course, they wouldn't let us fly around there, nor were we able to go look at it. But several weeks after that, we were allowed to go. And we saw areas there that was congealed in sort of to a glass finish, very slick looking. That sand had melted at a very high degree of temperature there. And it melted, and we saw some cattle that obviously were somewhat involved in it because the pelt on one side of the hide was white. And I'm sure they died later on, but that was a very light bomb compared to the rest of them, and that's the damage it did there impressed me, so I know what the others heavy bombs did.
Now, what the Trinity explosion? How big was that? Do you remember the tonnage on that, or?
I do not. I think it was 100. No, I better not say because I don't know. But it was the lightest one they had because there were even scientists who thought it was going to blow up the whole state. You know, some of these guys thought a chain reaction was going to happen. Thank God it didn't.
Yeah, I know that was one of the theories that actually it could be the end of the universe. You do this.
Absolutely. Of course, you know, atomic reactions are going on the sun every second on the second, and we get these flares from the sun, so I don't suppose it's very likely we'll ever get a chain reaction. But I was impressed by what I saw after the fact, and I wouldn't have wanted to been around there when it happened. I'm sure it devastated everything.